And to finish the day, ladies and gentlemen, hope you can stay with us just for a few more moments. I'd like to welcome Dr Gabor Maté back onto the stage just to summarise for a very quick couple of minutes about today. Is Gabor around? He's around? There he is. Thank you, sir. Big round of applause. Big.
Thank you. I will make a few closing remarks. I've been given 10 minutes. I don't think I'll need that long. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the remarkable conversation that we just witnessed. What's remarkable about it is that people at such high level of authority and policy-making influence are actually engaged in this conversation. I just don't know of too many other jurisdictions, or really any jurisdictions, where I would witness that. I mean, these conversations about the adverse childhood experiences, trauma, and so on, they are taking place internationally now, but not necessarily at such high level. And I do think that, I've only been in your country 3 days, but I do think that there's a unique opportunity here. And a unique opportunity is born out of a few factors. One of them is that, as somebody said I think in the logo to this conference, that we're 5 million. Now that's a big difference. The United States is, 300 million. It's also a much more homogeneous population than you might find elsewhere. Now, I don't mean to dismiss the welcome diversity that's developing here as well, with multi-ethnic immigration and traditions here, but by and large, it's more homogeneous than most other countries are, which means that it's easier to speak the same language. There's also a powerful tradition of radical thought in Scotland. Scotland's been a leading intellectual centers going back at least to the 18th century, as far as I know. And so that and your national poet was a rebel, you know, so that really there's an ethic here. I also think Scotland, I mean, I don't mean to present myself as any kind of an expert on this country, but it's a country that has been colonized and traumatized historically. I mean, your heroes are all you know, I come from Hungary, where all the statues are of people who led failed wars of liberation against foreign rule in one way or another. And of course, your national hero is also of that same cloth. So this country has been hurt, and it knows the pain. And so I do think, and then the other factor that's here is a remarkable group of people who have really made it a commitment that this is going to be a trauma-informed society. And this is going to be a society that can move from adverse childhood experiences to assets, to resilience. In other words, you learn from the negative experience or learn from the painful experience. And if you learn from it, that'll make you more powerful. There's an old saying that whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger. That's not true. Whatever doesn't kill you can deeply hurt you and disable you. But if you learn from it, that can make you stronger. And what I do see here is a tremendous commitment to that learning. And so I do think there's a unique opportunity here, and I do think that Scotland is in a position to become a world leader and to show the way to many other jurisdictions, many other countries, and many other communities. A quick word about the war on drugs. As one questioner put it, there is no war on drugs. You don't make war on inanimate objects. The war is on human beings. I'll read you a passage from my book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. Detective Sergeant Paul Gillespie, head of Toronto's Sex Crimes Unit, rescued children from purveyors of internet pornography. As the Globe and Mail newspaper reported, on his retirement from police work, 6 years at that job had not inured him to the horrors that he witnessed. Paul Gillespie still can't get used to the sounds of crying and pain in the graphic videos of children being raped and molested that he has seen all too often on the web. It's beyond horrible to listen to the songtracks of these movies, said Canada's best-known child porn cop. But it's the silent images of desolate children that tear most at his heart. They're not screaming, just accepting, he said, of the infants captured in his pictures. They have dead eyes. You can tell that their spirit is broken. That's their life. There's 2 points to be made. When you suffer that much, you literally have to harden your heart against suffering. The only way you can survive. And there you have your hardened criminals. That's how become people hardened criminals. They're the most sensitive ones. They're the most hurt ones. And as somebody on the panel said, well, we have to protect ourselves against those we fear, legitimately fear. We can also approach everybody with compassion. We can protect ourselves and still have compassion. That's the first point. The second point is that if the same compassionate policeman, instead of retiring from police work, had transferred to the drug squad, who do you think he'd be chasing in the streets? Those same kids who he didn't rescue. So here we have the contradiction. We try to do our best to protect our children from that kind of trauma, and when we fail to protect them, and they end up behaving in ways that act out that trauma, particularly through drug use, we punish them severely. Well, what sense does that make? And we do have examples. I mean, we talk about evidence-based. Let's look at the example of Portugal. Many of you may be aware that in Portugal, not that long ago, they decriminalized the personal possession of drugs. Crime's gone down, more people are in treatment, and there's a much better atmosphere in the country on the whole issue of addiction. And there's been no downside whatsoever, no downside whatsoever. And so we know from evidence all over the world that harm reduction works, saves lives, that a compassionate attitude, an evidence-based attitude works. It's not evidence that we're lacking, it's the will and the public commitment. That's what we're lacking, and the political and the readiness of policymakers to act on the evidence. Let me finish with a quote from, if I can find it, from a Catholic monk, Thomas Merton, who wrote and worked in the first half of the 20th century. And if I don't find the quote, I'll paraphrase it. He's talking about finding ourselves, that recovery that I was talking about. And I was not talking about it, when he wrote about recovery or finding the self, he was not talking about recovery from drug addiction. He was just talking about the finding of the self. But here's what he said. In order to gain possession of ourselves, we have to have some confidence, some hope of victory. It's not true that people need more negative consequences to get them to stop dysfunctional behaviors. If negative consequences did anything for people, then why are there people in the streets with HIV still using? As Harry pointed out, why do the people coming in not caring whether they live or die? It's not negative consequences they need. They ever had plenty of those. What they need is some hope of victory. And so he said, in order to keep that hope alive, we must usually have some taste of victory. We must know that victory is and like it better than defeat. And I'm going to suggest to you that the victory for these people that we're concerned about here today is actually just one encounter with a human being that treats them like a human being. just one encounter with somebody who sees past their behaviors, past their hardened, perhaps, and desolate faces, past their troubling behaviors, and sees the humanity and believes in the humanity, sees the positive, who sees the potential. In other words, who sees the real person in their fullness. That's the victory. And every one of us, in every endeavor and in every encounter in our lives, in our work, we can deliver that victory. Thank you.